Robson again, getting it back from Stapleton. He's on his way. Can he find the shot? Brilliant goal!
Cantona making the early run. Here he is! Lovely goal! Lovely goal!
Fantastic skill from the Argentinian international. Still Redondo. It's Raul. Raul walking away with it. Green off his far post. Jimmy Green off. Missed again. What a player this boy is. He's got another.
Hello and welcome to United Rewind, the podcast that revisits classic United matches. I'm Daniel Harris, and as ever, alongside me is Rob Smythe. We're back after the Christmas break with an FA Cup third round banger, the 3-2 win over Manchester City at the Etihad in January 2012. You alright, Rob? Good week?
Yeah, new year, new Bob. I'm off the booze, so I'm full of the joys. How about you?
Not off the booze, but yeah, apart from the absolute havoc that is taking place across the world during
Yes, so we're actually still in tier 3. I was quite relieved because yesterday there was obviously the announcement about Scotland. I thought, shite, but actually because we've had like one case in a month, so we're quite lucky at the moment. I can still go to, I was going to say Costa Coffee. There is no Costa Coffee, but I can still go to a coffee shop, things like that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a coffee.
Never had a coffee?
No, and I tell you what, I have once. My mates of mine had a wedding, and it was the day before I had an exam at law school. And obviously, I went to the wedding with the intention of not doing any drinking. Obviously, then got absolutely steaming, but couldn't sleep afterwards because I had private acquisitions going around my head. So I just couldn't sleep that night. I only had a couple of hours sleep, and then I had, and so I drank a cup of coffee the next day, and yeah, it didn't work well for me at all.
So what do you normally have if you've got a really important, live blog coming up or something?
A spliff? no, not really, bosses.
Wouldn't I have the... Yeah.
I don't like the taste of coffee in anything. And it's sort of, I do find it appealing because anything that kind of introduces a buzz to your daily grind sounds like something in which one should be interested. But I just can't get on board with the taste at all. Like coffee ice cream, coffee desserts, any of that kind of thing. I don't get it. Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah. Although I was quite late to that. I used to just have like fizzy drinks and shit, like the peasant I am, until I was about 30, and then I discovered coffee. Yeah.
No, I still love fizzy drinks. And I think that's one of the problems with hot drinks in general is if you could make them fizzy, I would definitely be interested. And I think it's back to what I said before about trying to turn everything possible into a buzz. I love hot food. And I think one of the reasons is because it turns eating into some kind of buzz. And yeah, so fizzy hot drinks I could get on board with.
That's your that should be your Dragon's Den idea. But anyway,
fizzy hot drinks.
Yeah,
I know someone who went on Dragon's Den, and Peter Jones said to him, "Right now, you're looking really poor as an individual." Exactly. You just feel so bad. Like every time you saw him, you'd be like, "How's it going?" Don't like to say it, but you're looking really poor as an individual. Yeah, I'm an hilarious individual. Anyway, before we revisit this week's game, we should look back on the life of the Doc, Tommy Docherty, United's manager from 72 to 77, who died on New Year's Eve. And I think anyone who didn't follow United under Tommy Docherty wishes that they did.
Yeah, exactly. The second division in particular, but just that whole period really kind of gave United their glory back, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's like Fergie's sort of 94 team where you can just immediately name the team. Stepney Nichols, Buck and Green off Albiston, Macari McElroy, Coppell Pearson, Green off Hill.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wasn't even around then, but there's just something... When you even think about the fact that they played, not only did they play 4-2-4, but they played Macari and Matt.
Yeah, exactly. That's the
field
thing.
players.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd, isn't it? Yeah, it was so many great games. The cup runs in particular, Wolves away in 76, and obviously we're going to do the 77 final next week, which was probably his finest hour. There's a lovely quote from Tommy Kavanagh, the assistant manager, who said, "You have to be fit just to watch our team," which kind of sums them up, really. Just so attacking, so relentless, but also such style about them as well. I mean, I was talking to my brother who was born in 1970, and he was just raving about Gordon Hill, which I guess everyone of that age would. And Coppell as well. I love the contrast between Hill and Coppell as well. Coppell just so direct and kind of unplayable, and Hill, that beautiful left foot, bit of a kind of Cockney swagger. Just two brilliant wingers.
It's a bit Kanchelskis and Giggs, isn't it? Just one bloke trying to do things as simply and as straightforwardly as possible, and the other bloke a bit more fancy.
Yeah. What a player Copper was, by the way.
It's every time I watch a game from that era, I'm struck by, I think, like the economy of effort, but just like the total competence in every
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah.
Everything he does, is the right pass and the right speed and the right power and the right height every cross.
Mm.
I actually had the privilege of interviewing the doc about 18 months ago.
Was that for the Busby?
Yeah.
Oh.
He was one of those things where we realised after we'd done it that he wasn't part of the story that we needed to tell, because the film pretty much needed to finish on the 68, and then you have a little bit after 68, and Doherty was obviously part of the story afterwards. And it was kind of annoying because he shows quite a lot of Busby's character and what happened with the whole Tommy Doherty affair. But it just wasn't quite part of the story. And I think the doc at that point in his life was a bit reticent to kick off any old rows.
Could you have done 5 hours, Busby?
Oh, and the rest, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it must be the hardest thing about making a film. I think just editing it down to. I can't write anything below about 5,000 words. So goodness knows how you can edit someone's life down to 90 minutes.
Well, it's one of those things where where so much happened. I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm working on a film at the moment. I've written a film about Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank that we're going into production with, and there are certain things that happen that you would think like that was a massive event, but like it just does. If it doesn't work in the context of the film, you're not trying to. That's not. I mean, that's not a documentary. And one of the things you constantly say to yourself is, "It's not a documentary" when you leave stuff out. But there's just you can't tell everything that is important. And what you're trying to do is, the way I guess you try and look at it is not so much is this a fact, but is this true? By showing this, am I telling something true about the time or the people or the story? And if the answer is yes, then you do it. But yeah, with Busby, there was just so much, and you can't tell every anecdote or every great line that you have or every aspect of the story, because films particularly work according to a structure. So with a scripted feature, you'll be more likely to be saying, well, it's not a documentary. And with a documentary, you're saying it's not a book. Because in a book, you're basically, you can just put everything in there because you have total control over where the narrative goes. But with a visual medium, slightly different. Let's talk about Ole's glorious, wondrous, sensational Reds. It's been a good few days, weeks.
Yeah, they've had more penalties in the last 2 years than I've had in 25 on Championship Manager, and I don't know why. It's great, isn't it? I mean, I still don't think they're going to win the league. I still think it's a bit too soon, but they are in a title race, and that alone is bloody exciting. Even more so when you have a kind of nascent Keegan meltdown from Jurgen Klopp. I mean,
yeah, I agree. I mean, coming back to that first point, it's such a pleasure to watch and think about United playing in games that matter beyond the fact that United are playing in them.
Yeah.
And because I feel like even the defeats are better when they mean something. Like when they went out of Europe this season, I was pissed off because I genuinely felt that United are capable of beating any team on a good day.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, like when we got battered by Barcelona, I was pissed off that we got battered by Barcelona, but I was also relieved that we didn't, because I knew that we could play Liverpool and get battered by them at some point in the advanced stages of the competition. And at that point, the annoyance was that United weren't good enough to really do anything in this competition. Whereas this year, it's different. I felt United could have done something. And I feel like, and I think you'll probably agree with me about this, there's also, it started off, when it felt like United were good, I was feeling some level of professional pride, because I know we've both written about the fact that if you're bothered to look at what United are doing, you can see progress. And that predates Bruno even, that you can see Ole was doing a lot of the right things. And the majority of people that write about football were saying Ole doesn't know what he's doing and the team are rubbish. And it was making me think, do I know what football looks like? We've both spent all our lives watching a team that is good, and I felt like this team was good, and that's sort of progressed now, because I'm not really worried about that anymore, because I think United are good, and we're not going to go back to where we were at the early stages of last season or the early stages of this season. And I was I don't know if it's the pandemic that's making me feel like this, because I've been thinking about this a lot, that I'm one of those relentlessly happy dickheads, and I don't really get angry. I don't have moods. I love my wife, I love my daughter, and I love a lot of my job. And yet, it is unbelievable how much more happily I'm going about my life again now that United are good.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the other thing about the progress is that the two wins over or after Christmas were really pleasing because they're the kind of games, Wolves in particular, they wouldn't have won a year ago. That would have been just a tedious 0-0, as it often was against Wolves. And even the Villa game, that was a bloody hard game. And to win that as well, that kind of, because they weren't great. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but they weren't great at winning ugly, were they? They kind of redefined winning ugly by playing terribly in the first half, brilliantly in the second, and winning. But this was actually, the Wolves game in particular was a kind of conventional winning ugly. Yeah, I think it's really encouraging. I agree. I mean, I still think this season is slightly too soon, but it wouldn't. The thing is, they could, if they were to win at Burnley and Anfield, and I know that's a big if, but they would be 6 points clear of Liverpool and would have undermined them by taking their unbeaten record.
And Liverpool have a lot of difficult games. I would
They've
say
got a lot coming up, haven't they? Yeah, in the next 6 weeks or so.
If United could avoid defeat at Anfield and say win the other 3 games that they've got around that, then I think they might have a lead. And it does reek of 08-09 this season with Bruno as Gerrard and Rashford as Torres. But we said about the Wolves game was interesting to me, I think, because what it seemed like to me was Rashford forced that to happen.
Yes.
And it was coming, that goal. Not that they were peppering the goal, but every time they got the ball to him, he looked like he was going to make something happen. And I feel like the extent of the mentality change under Ole is monumental. They used to get discouraged if things didn't go well early on, and now they don't. Then they couldn't come back if they went behind, and now they can. They had that whole business of starting games slowly, and they've put that away. And the thing that really impressed me a lot in the last couple of games is the way that he's rotating the team and still getting decent positions out of them, decent performances out of them, in particular Bailly. But that's also the sign of a good team, where if you remember, like after lockdown, he basically ran the same 11 players into the ground because he thought the rest of them were dickheads.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, Bailly's been excellent, hasn't he?
I mean, I think Maguire is much happier with someone who can run next to him. And
yeah,
Bailly is a better player than Lindelof at his top level. It's just he's liable to have a catastrophe at any point.
Or get injured, yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's always been there, the raw materials. And from the first season, it was kind of just about enough goodwill to sustain him through, Brighton away and all the injuries and stuff. But I'm really pleased to see him actually getting a run.
And the thing with him is he's quite young in football years.
Yeah, he is.
Played a lot of top level games.
27, 20.
But he's just because he spent
I know exactly.
3 years being injured, 4 years being injured. He never got the opportunity to build on the raw materials that he had, and the fact that he was really inexperienced for someone of his age. But he's absolutely getting it done now. And I guess before we actually move on to the game, we should also remember that. I mean, this sounds so. We were both very ashamed of ourselves yesterday for celebrating the arrival of a coach.
Yeah. No, I think it's brilliant news, Darren Fletcher doing the coaching stuff. I couldn't pick someone I would prefer, with the possible exception of Roy Keane for comedy value. Fletcher, no. I mean, you absolutely love him, and I do as well. But he's got everything really. He's clearly very intelligent, analytical, and also he's just like so passionate about United. If he can't convey through osmosis what it means to play for United, then no one can.
Yeah, I actually met Darren Fletcher at the game we're going to do. I say met. I don't really mean met. Him, Ashley Young, and Tom Cleverley were in United, and then just before the end, I think he walked past me, and I basically, how when managers sub players, they walk off and they sort of put a hand on the back and a hand on the chest. And I basically substituted Fletcher. I put like that, and I said, Darren, I really hope you get well soon. I really love watching you play for United. And he properly looked me in the eye and he said, thanks very much. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure what he meant was, get out of my fucking face, dickhead. But the way that he kind of looked me in the eye and we had a conversation where he could just have easily said, yeah, whatever, just made me think, for the infinity of time, this man is just an absolute mensch.
Yeah, it's a good point about the eye contact, actually. I can imagine him being a proper disciple of eye contact. And also, it's forgotten what a player he was for probably about 2 years, I would say, from 08 to 2010, so the colitis started to get really bad. I know a lot of people laugh at this, and I couldn't give a toss, really. I think he was as good as anyone in Europe in his position for 2 years. Particularly 09-10, he dragged that team on his own almost to the brink of winning another league title.
Yeah, he always, you could see that he had something in
because
him.
he was the Arsenal specialist, wasn't he, even as a teenager?
Yeah, and he played a lot. He played out of position. Like, unlike a Fergie central midfield player, didn't get lost to right back, but he did have to play right midfield. And he looked all right in some games because he was a good player, but that wasn't his position. But as soon as he got into the team, you could see that he had a lot. And when you hear him speak about football, you can hear he's got a lot to impart.
No, agreed.
So moving on to some emails and tweets. Calvin Betton says to me that high-tech trainers were perfectly acceptable.
No.
Now, I actually know Calvin Betton, so what I will say is he is from Barnsley, and maybe that was the case there. And it was funny that after we finished recording last week, 2 weeks ago, I remembered that I was wearing my high-techs with the tongues poking out. No, I was not wearing my high-tech. Sorry, I was wearing these Gola trainers that I had for games at school. We were playing football, and one of the badass kids says to me, he goes, "Nice trainers." So I go, "I'm not really going to wear nice trainers to kick them up playing football." And he goes, "You don't have any nice trainers."
You should have just looked him in the eye, Fletcher style, and said, "Thanks very much. That means a lot."
Exactly. Yeah, eye contact. There it is. And then Calvin also says, because we're talking about singles since Wonderwall that defined the times, he says, "Crazy in Love signified the point where hip-hop and R&B became the biggest force in music. Guitar music never recovered. But up to that point, Indian rock music was still at least on the par, and there'd not been a stratospheric R&B tune by a superstar. But equally, Wonderwall did the same thing for ED music. There was before and after Wonderwall."
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Neil Rennick emails and he says, "I watched this in a social club in Newcastle while visiting family up there. I vividly remember jumping up celebrating Andy Cole's goal and a bunch of angry Geordies looking like they wanted to beat the shit out of me even though I was only 13.
There were some funny stories along those lines of, I forget where I read them, but of people watching the Bayern 99 game in Liverpool and things getting the better of them and then being very quietly advised it might be best to do one within the next 2 seconds.
It's an interesting age that where you realise, because I went and sat in the home ends quite a lot watching United away games as a kid. So you celebrate the goals and you get to an age where you think, actually, if I do that again, someone's going to batter me.
Yeah.
I almost got battered Sheringham's debut at Spurs where I exulted when United scored. And my dad was, "Don't do that again." Although by that point, I think I was 18. Mark Gillespie, one more from Mark. He says, "Enjoyed the pod. I particularly like the bit about Cole. I've always wondered the exact same thing about that missed chance in his first game against Blackburn, which was whether or not he was going to, that would have affected the first few months or whatever. I always wondered whether he felt Cantona didn't rate him, and that was at least partly why he blossomed properly the season after Cantona retired."
There was a lot of talk about that, wasn't there, at the time? There were a couple of moments though, like towards the end, it seems to get better. Do you remember Blackburn away in April '97? And Cole makes a goal brilliantly for Eric, and by then they seem to be on a decent wavelength. But there was always talk about it, and probably, to be honest, he probably didn't rate him, particularly the way he was playing.
The '96 Cup final really stands out as well.
I felt so sorry from that day. He was just the first 15 minutes in particular. He was like he was having a nervous breakdown or something. But actually, the other thing, we probably said this, but the mental strength he showed to come back from that, it's not just going to a club and having a shocker. It's going to United and having a shocker at a time when ABUism was on the rise for 18 months pretty much. To come back from that showed so much strength. And also pneumonia, having his legs broken by Ruddock.
I mean, I think even if you went further back than that, he got rejected by Arsenal and had to go to Bristol City to get himself back, and he did it because in the end, I think football is, and sport generally, they're one of the last remaining meritocracies. That you always hear, you often hear it sanctimoniously cited with regard to the arrival of the foreigners. They're all getting in the way of the English players, and I always felt that is a load of bollocks, because
of course it is.
If you're good enough, then you will get your opportunity, and it will happen. Like, there are definitely people who, perhaps as children, aren't getting enough exercise, enough playing fields, enough access to any of the things they need access to be able to make the most of their talent. But I feel like once you're in the system at a club, if you're good enough, then everyone is desperate for talent, and it was always mainly Chelsea, and I don't think Josh McEachran would have been a better footballer if Chelsea had fewer foreign players or whoever. Like, who are these players that haven't made it at Chelsea and haven't made it anywhere else either?
Yeah, I do slightly believe in sliding doors, particularly as relates to confidence. But I think essentially I agree with you. But for example, I do often wonder, would Keith Gillespie have been a great player had were it not for a foreigner rule? How would that have impacted upon Beckham and so on? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that that life and football aren't random, and that how much of a success you go on to make. I'm saying that if you have the talent to play, then almost always someone will find that talent.
Yes.
Like Peter Beardsley, David Platt, like good
Yeah.
examples of that. That if you are good enough, then you'll get opportunities, and what you do with them, obviously, and how they work out for you, then the randomness of life and the randomness of football take over.
Do you know what we should do one week is return to this subject and do the 93 Youth Cup final when United was stuffed by Leeds and look what happened to the Leeds players and why it happened or didn't happen. Because I think it's a really interesting topic. And that game
agreed.
alone is quite funny because obviously United were absolutely battered, I think 4-1 on aggregate.
No, even Jamie Forrester.
Yeah, exactly. And Scholes looking absolutely terrified, taking a penalty and so on. But anyway, that's another thing.
I think the '82 Youth Cup final might be on YouTube against Watford. My dad went to that. Whiteside and Hughes played in that.
You know what we should do is try and track down one of the Watford centre halves and ask him if they're over it yet.
Ask him to roll up his legs.
Yeah. We've had some nice emails suggesting a few games. One is from Andrew Jameson, who said, "My suggestion would be Arsenal 1, United 2 from 99-2000. Keane scores 2, has a battle with Vieira after a Beckham dive. It's one of the highest quality games in our history." I agree with that. I think that because the replay is the greatest game in anyone's history, the FA Cup semi the previous season, it kind of overshadows both this game and the 1-1 during the league.
The 1-1 during the league in 98-99 is brilliant, I agree.
But I'm surprised Andrew mentions the Keane Vieira battle and doesn't mention Jaap Stam needing about 47 people to restrain him as he rumbles towards Vieira. I think it's one of my favourite Stam moments.
Amazing.
It's just a kind of slow rumbling. I don't think I'd want anyone rumbling towards me less than Jaap Stam.
Someone was detaining me on Twitter yesterday, insisting that Vieira was a better player than Keane, which is why I just literally cannot get my head around.
No, I don't think so.
Like, what was Vieira doing in the period where Keane was dominating the league? And Vieira also didn't get in the France team in 1998. Played 20 minutes at the end of the final. Imagine dropping Roy Keane from a football team.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, if you look at the titles that Vieira won, he won 98 when Keane does his cruciate in September. 2002, where Keane misses 10 league games, which is basically enough to make the difference, and 04 when he's finished. It's not. I don't see that as a coincidence.
I think it was pretty close between them, but I would take Keane mainly because of two reasons: one, his broader influence on the team, and also his passing was so much better.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vieira was a brilliant player.
Oh yeah, he was. But Vieira carried the ball better, definitely.
Yeah, but I think that if you look at how they did when they faced each other, how their teams did. I don't think it's that close. Anyway, so this week's match, the thrilling 3-2 win over City in the FA Cup third round in January 2012. Before we move on to talk about that, should we just have a little listen to remind ourselves what happened?
Lindegaard not hanging around this time. Richard's much bigger than Nani. Here's Giggs. Rooney. Options right and left here for Wayne Rooney. This is Antonio Valencia. In towards the head of Rooney! To Manchester United, and the name of Wayne Rooney is in the headlines again. Goal scorer. Giggs seizing on the loose ball. This is Nani. Kolarov coming in two-footed but low, and the referee had to think about that and is going to penalise the Manchester City. Oh, it's red card for Kompany. A red card for Vincent Kompany. Manchester City down to 10 men inside 12 minutes. It was two-footed. For me, it was low. But Kompany, who has been outstanding for Manchester City this season, both as captain and centre-back, will play no further part. Chris Ford has sent him off. Rooney. Nani. He's got support from Evra here. Plenty of red shirts in the box. Came off Welbeck. Welbeck's volley, 2-0. Manchester United 2 up in half an hour. Danny Welbeck. Looked as if the chance had gone, but he managed to improvise a volley. His first goal since the start of October has given Manchester United clear daylight here in the third round derby. Rooney to Giggs, slipped through to Danny Welbeck, tackle came in, penalty. Kolarov penalised, and it goes from bad to worse for Manchester City. It's Wayne Rooney again. Saved by Pantolimon, and Rooney heads in the rebound, and Manchester United lead by 3-0. So free kick here, which Lindegaard has assembled a wall of 5. It's Alexander Kolarov. Oh, yeah. And Manchester City have got a goal back. Beautifully delivered over the United wall by Kolarov. And what difference will that make to the mood and to Manchester City's approach? That's loose from Scholes. Cross from Milner. Aguero! He's going to get another chance. And Manchester City are right back in business. Paul Scholes' error. More than a quarter of this cup tie still to play. And Manchester City down and out of the break. Have a chance, a real chance.
Bit of context going into the game. Obviously, the City's 6-1 win at Old Trafford was a huge shadow over it. United actually recovered really well from that, but then they buggered up badly at the turn of the year. They lost at home to Blackburn when Raphael and Park played in centre mid, and Pogba sat on the bench quietly fuming. Then they were stuffed away at Newcastle.
I remember the Newcastle
that Phil
game.
Jones' own goal.
I was at that Newcastle game, and the weather was so inclement. I used to have these combat trousers, I guess you might call them, like skateboarding trousers, whatever, that kind of affair. And they were like baggy effect, and I basically got blown down a hill when they started acting like wind sails after that game. But I think it's understated genius of Ferg what came this season. The 6-1 where he just picked that team at Everton in the next game,
Yes,
and was absolutely sure that they won.
it was clean sheet, load of clean sheets, wasn't it? After that,
it felt like he sort of personalitied them a win. Cleverly was injured, and he made Cleverly play because it was so important that they won that game. And I don't think he was seen after that game until Wigan when they lost.
Until you saw him in the away end. Yeah, and of course they'd also got out of the Champions League at Basel, whatever. So, and yet in the league, despite that and despite the 6-1, they had 45 points from 20 games, which is pretty good going. 3 behind City, who had a wee blip over Christmas as well, but were then kind of helped out by United losing those 2 games. So, but the context really, more than anything, it was just a derby, wasn't it? It was more about the 6-1 and everything else, and also potentially point scoring for the title race. But it was kind of what I realised, because I'd not forgotten this game, but I hadn't really thought about it much since because of how the season would unfold. But actually rewatching it, you realise just how intense it was in that moment and how it was just a derby. Nothing else really mattered.
Yeah, I mean, it was really lively around the ground that day, and I mean, the game sort of starts an hour before the game where you start to find out that Scholes is playing.
Where did you find out?
I was outside, just walking around to the United end, and it's just that classic Ferg dastardliness and his love of drama.
You know, we hadn't told the players.
Yeah.
They all kind of Scholes came along, and they just thought because he was reserve team coach, he was just coming along and he was in his suit and everything. And they literally got in the dressing room and saw Scholes. I forget what number he was wearing by that stage, because we should, in case people have forgotten, he'd retired at the end of the previous season. And then he'd gone to Fergie, I don't know, maybe a month earlier, and said he was basically missing it really badly. He'd been training with the reserves and everything. And Fergie said, yeah, well done, back you come. And
yeah, I mean, at 38, and it's just ridiculous that he then came back and started controlling games again. And he it's funny because it's the way that Ferg just didn't tell the players, as you say, it's just obviously calculated that you're playing a derby against a team that beat you 6-1. And you know that you've been done in midfield that day. And even before the red cards and everything that happened afterwards, City were too good for United that day.
Yeah, they were. There's been a bit of revisionism about that game, mainly from Ferguson himself. So.
Yeah, I mean, United might. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever do the 6-1. I'm not sure if I can ever make myself watch that again. But they might have been able to haul their way back into it without the red card, but it would have been a haul. It wouldn't have been a play.
Yeah.
And Ferg said, and just turning up in the dressing room and seeing, got Paul Scholes today. Just the fillip that would give you is just a glorious thing. And Fergie said himself, he said, there's no negatives. And that is just Fergie all over, that everything is a positive.
Yes.
And then Southgate says, he's in the commentary box, not in the commentary box, he's in the studio, and he says the middle of the park is where United are at their shortest. And I thought, not sure Paul Scholes is going to help there. But,
the panel approach, Southgate, Roy Keane and Peter Reid, I quite enjoyed them. With Adrian Chiles, who I'd almost forgotten his ITV stint as well.
And Beckham was also in the crowd, so you've actually got the midfield are all there.
Yeah, Tilsley was doing a bit of banter, wasn't he, about Keane coming back. Just quickly run through the United team. So Scholes went onto the bench. The team was Lindegaard in goals, being preferred to De Gea at that point. De Gea had a few iffy games. He'd been at fault for Blackburn's winner, hadn't he, the previous week. Jones, Ferdinand, Smalling, Evra in defence. Phil Jones at this point was the new Duncan Edwards / Sir Bobby Charlton. Midfield, Carrick and Giggs. Then Valencia, Rooney, Nani behind Welbeck. Rooney at that, there was an independent exclusive that morning that Rooney was going to leave United in January because he'd been left out of the Blackburn game. I think it was him, Evans and Gibson, was it?
They've been boozing
going out on the piss, yeah. So there was all the usual stuff about that. And I think really quite enjoyed having the game that he did. Vidic was out for the season with the cruciate. Fletcher was out for the season. I
thought that no centre-back had ever injured their cruciate until this season, so I was actually quite surprised to discover that.
Yeah.
But
they actually, funny, just quickly to they didn't miss him much that season. Evans played really well for the most part with Ferdinand. They kept a lot of clean sheets, but then the infamous Everton 4.
It's Everton, isn't it?
They missed him terribly.
Yeah, there's not a chance that game finishes 4-4.
I agree with you about that, by the way, that it's not a chance it's 4. And yet, you go back a previous season, and Vidic was playing when Everton scored twice in injury time at Goodison. So are we contradicting ourselves there? I don't know.
Or looking at, I guess, a career and saying, well, seems unlikely that would happen again.
Yeah, true.
But the other thing I thought about Lindegaard, because whenever I think about Lindegaard, I always think about that line about he's not come here to pick his nose. Not that I think about Lindegaard every time I'm picking my nose, but he said it various times, and it was just, well, actually, you sort of did.
Yeah.
And I then encountered his wife slightly later on in The Real Housewives of Cheshire. I don't know if you're familiar with the oeuvre.
What do you think? What is this horror? I didn't even know it existed.
Are you familiar with the Real Housewives franchise?
Yeah, vaguely.
So the Real Housewives franchise is actually a good franchise, I would say, of reality television in some areas. But ultimately, no one like Cheshire. There's nothing culturally interesting or significant about Cheshire. Whereas watching the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills or New York or Potomac, not an area I even knew existed until I knew about the Real Housewives, is something slightly different. And because they go on for so long, you do sort of follow the lives and the ups and downs of these women over the course of years and years and years. And that gives you quite a lot of depth of character, although it does also have that very series vibe where everyone begins an episode in one place, things happen, and everyone finishes the episode or the series in roughly the same place as they started, rather than in a serial where, in theory, things are sort of meant to change. But in terms of understanding the lives and relationships of these groups of women, I say I recommended it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's better than The Sopranos, but I would say it's not something that should be dismissed as this is just a load of reality TV bollocks, because I would say it's not like that.
It's better than the last series of Breaking Bad, isn't it?
I didn't like Breaking Bad.
I did up to the last series, but anyway, enough of that.
One of the things I never understood about City was, well, Mancini being the manager sort of made me think about it, was they spent so much money on the team, yet it wasn't until Guardiola that they got a serious manager.
Yes.
And I always felt that they could have had Mourinho when Mourinho was still good.
You thinking 2013 when they got?
They could have. When was Mourinho? There was a time. Was there not a time before that when Mourinho was available? When Mourinho left Inter even in 2010.
Yeah, he was always going to go to Madrid then, surely.
But hang on, when did he leave? When did Mourinho leave Madrid?
He left Madrid in 2013. That was the big summer because Fergie left and Chelsea.
Oh yeah, of course.
And also City became available.
Yeah, so I guess it must be then that I was thinking of. But to have all that money, spend £1 billion on a football team, and your managers to be Mark Hughes and Roberto Mancini, who weren't dreadful managers, but
Hughes got the job before they took over, didn't he?
And then and as it goes, the clever signings were all Hughes signings.
A bit like Ranieri and Chelsea, Mourinho, isn't it?
Hughes signs that, and I was thinking more Pearson. And,
Ranieri,
where Pearson basically built that team, and then Ranieri made them all feel very nice.
Yeah,
it was Hughes who signed Kompany, Hughes who signed Zabaleta. Like signing Yaya Toure, doesn't require, or Aguero doesn't require any kind of footballing intelligence, really. But the clever signings were Hughes.
Yeah,
but he just couldn't get. Yeah, he just didn't have enough.
I thought Stephen Ireland would be the Lampard of that team. I thought he was absolutely brilliant for a while.
Well, they had two huge lost talents as well, because they had Michael Johnson as well.
Yeah. He looked a player, didn't he? Yeah.
I mean, I remember Stephen Ireland always reminds me of one of Peter Ball's great songs. His nan's not dead, he just forgot what we called. The next he's not. Just yes. I just so beautifully topical and cutting and unarguable against. But if we go to the game, I think the other thing is it was pissing it down with rain, proper United weather. And one of the things that I noticed was in the second minute, we get a foul throw from Nani. Which is just, at that point, he's become good now, Nani. He's had that winter of 09-010 when he becomes good. But he's still Nani. He is still Nani and liable for a foul throw. But United couldn't get out at all.
No, not at all.
And I think it made me realise that United should have won the league that season, obviously. But one-on-one, head-to-head, City were much better.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was purely, like you say, Ferguson personalitying wins, basically. Probably for 4 years post-Ronaldo, really. To win 2 leagues and to come so close to 2 more.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like it was
an achievement.
I mean, in some ways, it was his finest work, but
yeah, I agree.
I felt like it was a little bit more to it than it was just personality. When he was all of that, but when he couldn't compete, because you got to remember, City had a free run at signing Silva, Toure, and Aguero, which is a massive stroke of luck for them. That United were being rinsed really hard at the time.
Yeah.
Also, no one else wanted to buy those players, and no one with. I mean, I guess City had a lot more money. I mean, I doubt anyone would have paid them the money that Toure got, and also I think that there are the perks of playing for City when the own an airline and that kind of thing are equivalent to quite a lot more money than you would think they'd be getting in wages. But I think that what Fergie decided to do was he basically dispensed with a midfield. He didn't sign a midfield player from Owen Hargreaves to Nick Powell. But what he did do was he signed an absolute shitload of wingers and centre forwards, or not signed, or just had. So it meant that if there was a game against Wolves at home that you were struggling in, you send on Park, or the game where Giggs scores at the end against Norwich, which was Ashley Young. And if you have a load of different attacking players who all bring something different, then you can get away without having the best team, even if you end up getting smashed in the head-to-heads.
Yeah, no, that's true. And obviously embodied most by Van Persie, which was just... I do sometimes wonder, and I'm sure we'll get to this, maybe if we do another City away from 2012, the league game, but I do often wonder about how it would have ended for Fergie if he hadn't signed Van Persie, because Fergie couldn't go out not as a winner, could he?
No, and I guess he really... I mean, I'm not sure, but he probably knew what he was doing getting out when he did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, this game, so 10 minutes United don't get out, and then they suddenly do get out and score a pretty good goal, really.
It's a brilliant goal.
Started by Giggs in midfield.
That's the thing. It's a simple but clever pass by Giggs in midfield through the line, and that was the thing that really stood out for me in this game was the brilliant simplicity of the passing of Giggs, Carrick, and Rooney. So you find Giggs, play a clever ball from Giggs through the lines, finds Rooney in space. He sends it out to Valencia. It's a brilliant cross, but what a header. I mean, he's almost facing away from the goal when he connects. And when Clive Tildesley goes, in towards the head of Rooney! And then, first blood to Manchester United! And it's just another great piece of commentary. And it's the pause for the... It's just so good.
It's a brilliant header, because not only is he challenged by 2 City defenders, he's challenged by Nani as well, isn't he? Who goes,
of course, and it goes in off the bar for extra points.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of things on this. Valencia was having a really good spell, wasn't he? He was Player of the Year, I think, fans and players this season. And for a short while, he had a proper kind of bromance with Rooney, didn't he?
It was more 09-10. I couldn't get on board with Valencia.
For 3 seasons, obviously split by the injury, I really liked him. And this game reminded me why I liked him. So, I mean, the game of his career was Chelsea in the 10-11 when he
ran over Ashley
Cole. He gave
Cole.
Ashley Cole the biggest chasing I've ever seen him get in his career. But I don't know. Anyway, go on. I
I
really
always
liked him.
felt with Valencia that he just didn't score enough goals, and also that he should have stayed in Wigan and become the best rugby league player in the world. I think he's a brilliant rugby league player. But I felt, I don't know, like one of the things I never understood about the Ronaldo deal, Ronaldo paid 80 million quid for Ronaldo, and that was obviously a steal at the time.
Yeah.
If United had said, give us Robin and Schneider as well.
Yeah, I know. That really pissed me off. Robin in particular.
Robin, yeah.
The back end when Fergie had no money, I was sort of one of the tricks he missed because every year someone decent was going for pennies from Real Madrid.
If they'd have said, give us £80 million and Robin, or £80 million plus the £16.5 million we're about to give Wigan for Antonio Valencia.
Yeah, that it would have done. I agree.
And I felt that was a massive drop bollock. But yeah, he did have that period in 09-10 where him and Rooney were just were friends.
Yeah, but even this season, I remember the QPR game just before Christmas. Rooney scored a header. I think it was the first minute. They won 2-0 from another really good Valencia cross. I liked Valencia because he had that Koppel Kanchelskis quality. He was inconsistent. That was the thing. And when he was bad, I don't know. I think he was at his best. I think he was, and he was a good crosser. The problem is, I suppose, I think there's an issue of Bottle in big games. But he had an absolute nightmare against Barcelona when I thought he'd be.
That's one of the great nightmares.
I thought it'd be United's only hope, actually, of genuinely troubling them.
Just getting the ball down the other end, like the ability to carry the ball. But yeah, Nani made such a difference when he came on.
Yeah. But yeah, he played a year in 11-12, and then his career just kind of faded massively, didn't it, at United? And he ended up obviously as a right back.
And then, so we got the goal on 10 minutes, and then on 12 minutes, Company gets a red card. I mean, I can't say it without laughing.
The first thing I love about this, you talk about the crowd noise a lot, is that massive sense of uproar when the card comes out from the crowd, from Tilsley, from it's just brilliant. It reminds me.
Roon was in really quickly, letting the ref know what happened.
Roon and Carrick. It reminds me a little bit. Do you remember when Berg was sent off at Blackburn in the 4-2 and Tim Flowers put sand on his face and was collapsing? I just love that sense of uproar you get, particularly when a home side has a player debatably sent off against United. It's just brilliant. I mean,
and you've got Nigel de Jong, the Perez de Quelia of Manchester leading the protests.
We should try what happened to. There's a loose ball, probably a 50-50. Company goes 2-footed but low. Nani pulls out. And Nani doesn't actually do anything. He goes looking for the loose ball. And Rooney and Carrick are straight in. And then the ref blows and everyone thinks, oh, well, that's an iffy foul. Straight out comes a red card. It's just so funny.
Do you think it was a red?
I think it's difficult, this. I've kind of thought about it a lot. I think probably yes, because if Nani doesn't jump, then he could get his shin broken. But I'm still slightly uneasy with it. And I'm talking in the context of 2012, never mind now. I'm still slightly uneasy, only because I think back to all those ridiculous 50-50s between, Stam and Figo and people like that, and Ian Wright and Paul Ince. But Fergie made this point as well, that if Nani doesn't jump, then he's in trouble. Just quick before you say what you think about it, it's a great quote from the end of Ferguson. They're all looking for Ferguson when he's interviewed to say, oh, boy, it could have gone either way. And he just says, I've seen him do it before. He's maybe got away with it in the past.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I don't know. I think it probably is, but what about you?
It's one of them.
Yeah,
I think that's what Andy Townsend said.
My first thought was
we were supposed to know. I thought that I wouldn't mind if it hadn't been given, but once it was given, I didn't feel like you could argue very much about it not being a red card. And when you see it from the side at full speed, it does look quite dangerous.
The big thing I think is if Nani doesn't jump, it could be in serious trouble if his foot's planted. And that's the thing. People say that he won the ball and Nani jumped, but the point is, Company can't assume he's going to do that. So I can genuinely see both sides, really. I do remember at the time thinking it was a bad decision, but I guess we see it through slightly different eyes now. Because
it's just so funny as well, because
it's hilarious. He can't handle it, can he?
The game's finished in 2 minutes. Yeah. Like City start brilliantly.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't. It's one of those occasions where you can't believe what has happened to the game in so short a period of time.
Yeah, I know.
But the game, it turned out not to be the case, but it feels like the game is just over.
Yeah. It's weird, weird when that happens. Now, the example I always think of that is Portugal-Wales in the Euros in 2016. Like, first half, pretty quiet. Wales are still just about in it, even though, deep down they're struggling. And then suddenly, bang, bang, forget it.
I guess, the game we did in the last episode, United Madrid, is another one. But
exactly. Yeah.
What do you think of Company in general as a player?
You don't like him, do you?
It's not.
Does let's get down to brass tacks.
What more do you want in the centre back?
I thought he was an excellent player. Though.
I think he was a good player. I don't think he was not a good player. I thought he was a good player, and I can totally grasp every aspect of what people say about his importance to City as a leader. I had no arguments with that whatsoever. But when you're just talking about the actual defending, and people want to talk about him in the same list of players of Vidic, Stam, Ferdinand, Sol Campbell, Terry, Carvalho, I don't think he's anywhere near those guys. He's just someone I always thought had a mistake in him, and yeah, I don't know.
What's he? I'm trying to think. What was he like in Europe when they had that fast call run and they couldn't get past the group stage? I can't even remember.
I mean, I feel like that would always be the thing for this City team and Guardiola's team as well. The thing that stops them being great is at no point have they done anything in Europe. Any of them. Point me to Aguero's best games in Europe. Point me to David Silva's best games in Europe. Point me to Yaya Touré's best games in Europe for City. They don't exist. And part of that, I think, is what I was saying before about they didn't have a good manager. But ultimately, it's all about the players, and the players have got to be able to deal with it. If someone said to you, give me Wayne Rooney's best games in Europe, give me Ryan Giggs' best games in Europe, you'd have a list.
Yeah,
David Beckham's. There'd be a long list, and it'd be against better teams than the ones that were around when this City team were good as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wouldn't disagree with that. So it's similar, a not dissimilar thing applies to the Invincibles, doesn't it? That whole perverse thing that when the team broke up and was shit in the league, only then did they reach a final, which, yeah, is just completely illogical.
I mean, I guess part of that was just Henry was on one. But, yeah, I mean, that whole thing was just like with that Flamini at left back.
Yeah, it was Flamini. It was Flamini, Senderos, Touré and Aboué, and they kept about 8 clean sheets in a row. Absolutely bonkers. That's just like, how do you explain it? You think of all the analysis and everything that goes into football, and how do you explain that?
Ultimately, football is random, and all the players that play at that level are capable of, almost all of them, of attaining a high level. And the difference between the good ones and the bad ones is how often you hit that high level, but more than that, what level of your average level or the level of your lowest level.
Yeah.
And so you have that Arsenal back four, like they're all capable of doing something good at a time. And it so happened that they did it in Europe over that period. But the reason they weren't actually any good was because they didn't hit it very often and because their average level was dreadful.
Yeah. No,
I think it's probably that. Like Roy Keane, I think Peter Schmeichel said this about Roy Keane or Paul Scholes. I think I said it was Keane, and you've previously corrected me that it was Scholes.
I think it was you who told me this quote actually originally.
He had the highest bottom level of any player he'd come across, and I think that is what separates the really elite level players is how high their bottom level is.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So anyway, the game carries on, and Lindegaard saves a curler from Aguero, and then Phil Jones goes down. Of course he does. What do we think happened to Phil Jones?
I don't know. That's another one I just can't explain. I think we all got carried away. I know I did, like an idiot. Confidence more than anything.
Do you think it's confidence and injuries?
Yeah, probably. I think confidence is the biggest thing.
And is that connected to the fact that how well did he actually understand defending?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. It's hard to say because he's so watching this game again. I mean, he wasn't particularly amazing this game, but he was. There was a different kind of feeling about him, and there was a confidence about him on the ball. And I don't know. But you're right. Maybe
what happened to him now is his confidence is completely shot through injuries and people taking the piss.
Maybe youthful exuberance hid certain things. I don't know. Because he'd only be, even in this game, what's he, 19?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you know, obviously, who they almost signed instead of him?
Was it Varane they were trying to buy?
Yeah, it was Varane or Joe. Well, obviously, Varane was first choice, and then Zidane intervened. Yeah, that could have been a very different decade.
Yeah, we'd have a lot fewer memes, but
yeah,
a much, much better central defence. But and then it's quite a fast and furious after the first goal.
City have a lot of ball, don't they?
Yeah, they're still dangerous
until it goes 2-0. Then United take the piss for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, so on 30 minutes, Nani sends Johnson for a bag of sweets.
It's lovely, isn't it?
As it were.
Yeah. Just
do you want to talk us through the goal?
No, it's just lovely. Nani cuts in field, sits Johnson down, plays Ever in on the left of the area. His cross is deflected away from goal. It's a really odd goal, this. It's a good goal, but it's a very odd one. And Welbeck's running away from goal and then hooks a volley back towards the far corner, and it's a really good finish. But it's peculiar because it's almost like he just hasn't stopped running. He's chasing the ball wherever it goes. Oh, it's here. I'll jump and volley it in. But there's also the slightly odd thing that De Jong goes to boot it.
Hard man De Jong pulls
As he
out.
has, yeah, he's gone to boot everything in his life that moves and pulls out, which is really strange. I think it's actually
I also enjoyed the way the ball came off Nasri first, which I think
was that him?
Yeah, it was. And I think that was a subliminal message to oppose the system.
There was a great story about, because Fergie obviously Nasri chose City over United, and there was a great story in Red Issue. I don't know if it's true, but that someone was in, I think it was after whoever had a testimonial into 2011, Neville, Scholes, whoever, and Fergie was in his office after, and he apparently spoke to Nasri and said basically, City pay the wages, we win the trophies, enjoy the money. You sadly it didn't quite work out like that, but it's still a great story if true.
Fergie, what a man.
Welbeck was having a good season, wasn't it? I mean, it was quite sad looking back. This was his best season in terms of goals, and he scored 12, which made me feel quite sad. It's interesting, at half-time, Keane gives him the ultimate praise, a top player. And
he does.
He's 21 at this point, 22.
And talks about how good he's going to be. And that was what I wanted to ask you was, do you think that of all the players who suffered from Ferg bottling it and retiring in 2013, I think that he was the one who missed out, who lost the most for that?
Possibly. I never thought he was quite... I really liked him. There's nothing not to like, really. But I never thought he was going to be top class. I just thought everything was a bit too imprecise sometimes. I mean,
it wasn't a killer.
Everything about it was brilliant. His attitude was great. His work rate, just everything. Tactical discipline if he played wide or as a number 10 to watch their deep lying player. But just like you say, he wasn't a killer. He'd have been a brilliant. He shouldn't have been. He should never have been sold. He should still be there now as a squad player. Like I think a lot of people suffered from Van Gaal more than Moyes. Although now I was looking at his team actually. You've got like Raphael on the bench. Obviously, he was binned off. Hernandez, Nani, Welbeck.
The binning of Raphael, Van Gaal should be in the Hague for that.
Yeah.
I remember the first few times watching Welbeck play for United, and I would always call him Daniel because Daniel was my name. And I remember going, "Fuck's sake, Daniel!" And I'm thinking, I wonder how many people have said that with me being the Daniel. And I found that quite a sobering experience. But I also used to like the fact that his mum used to cook jollof rice and stew, like Ghanaian food, and bring it in for Welbeck and Rooney. Not Cleverley and Rooney, who were being introduced to taste in much the same way I was when I grew up with kind of bland Jewish Ashkenazi cooking, and then started going out with the British Ghanaian, and it was literally like someone to turn the lights on in my mouth. And it was nice. Yeah, I sort of enjoyed Welbeck doing that because he was still living at home. But he wasn't a killer, but he did have a beautiful touch and imagination. And I always wondered if Fergie had stayed, if he'd have turned him into enough to be a first choice. Because he'd been Berbatov for Welbeck.
Yes, that's true.
And Welbeck wasn't in the team at the beginning of the season, and he started the first game because Fergie had decided he was going to be a centre forward. And he said when he left, he told Moyes what an important player Welbeck was for United because they hadn't produced a centre forward since Hughes and Whiteside. Mm. And I think that's one of the things that gives me quite a lot of pleasure now, that not only United a lot of fun going forward, but they've got Rashford and Greenwood, two homegrown centre forwards, which is incredible.
Yeah.
I felt like Welbeck would have been a much better player if Fergie stayed.
Possibly. I mean, he did have a very good season around it. And he was good with Rooney, wasn't he? I mean, obviously, the best example is the York and Cole goal in the Everton 4-4. They did do so. He scored a really good winner at Arsenal, didn't he, as well? Or was it the first goal of this season?
No, it was Valencia scored the first goal. That was Welbeck. But he'd always sort of be remembered for that finish against Bayern Munich.
Oh, God, yeah.
But I think that he had a lot. I mean, he got killed by the injuries as well. It's not fair. Yeah. It wasn't just the absence of Ferg. Yeah. But I felt like he could have been a much better player than he turned out to be.
I always felt like he was like a 15-goal a season squad player. That was his kind of potential limit, which in itself is obviously bloody valuable.
He actually hadn't scored this goal that he scores. He hasn't scored since the start of October.
Had he not? That's interesting.
No.
They worked pretty well together, and his movement was very good. He was just absolutely relentless.
He strikes me as someone who the players enjoy playing with.
Yeah, both.
Because he played for England as well for quite a lot longer than you thought he might have
Hodgson
done.
liked him, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it was for that reason that he could play on the left, and he sort of sped the game up, Welbeck.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
which I
true.
always quite liked about him.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Okay, so it's 2-0 to United. Then Welbeck gets booked for barging Kolarov, and then on 39 minutes, we score again.
Yeah, Welbeck again, snappy movement. Kolarov, kind of just a stupid tackle, really. Welbeck nicks the ball away, clear penalty. Rooney has it saved by Big Pantilimon, but they go straight back to him. But he sort of does this weird sort of falling. I don't know if he slips, but he's a sort of falling header. It's lovely into an empty net, and then just wheels away, touching his ear.
It's such a great moment
It's
when you
brilliant,
miss a penalty.
that celebration of
they're
yeah.
celebrating,
Yeah,
you know that it's not going to matter.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Why did Rooney take so many penalties?
He was shit, wasn't it? I never trusted him really.
No, I mean he
But
did
who
score
would you
most
take in
of the
this?
big ones.
He did,
I
that's
mean,
true. But who would you
Giggs.
trust in this team?
Giggs.
Giggs, actually, yeah, because remember Giggs took 2 really good ones against Spurs, didn't he? At the back end of
Turned out to be really good at them,
having not
towards the
taken them for 17 years, apart from obviously Moscow.
and also Southampton
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because you mean when he missed one, or
when he juggles the ball
yeah,
to
yeah.
misses. But I actually want to take it back with that goal because what we get first before that goal is 2 simple balls through the line. One like side foot, straight passes, one from Rooney and one from Giggs that puts Welbeck in. And again, it's those kind of passes that are the kind of things we're only just starting to see back in the United team now.
Yes, good point.
Where it's only like a 5-10 yard pass, but it just
opened everything up.
The game from being nothing going on to you're on the front foot.
And both were excellent at that. Carrick obviously naturally, and Giggs became really good at that, didn't he? Those really crisp passes.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the Giggs could have moved into midfield sooner, but
yeah possibly. Just a quick note on Rooney. So that he's got 11 Manchester Derby goals. Is that right? Which I think is a record. He obviously had plenty of moments. He absolutely loved it, didn't he? Particularly away to them.
That one there was the 17th of the season, and he hadn't been playing particularly well.
Yeah, I know. So he ends up with 36, or same as in 09-10, and yet didn't feel like he had half as good a season. One other thing to say is that obviously earlier in the year he scored the overhead kick against City in the league when he was having a stinker, whereas here he actually played really well through the whole game. You could see he was bang on it. Yeah,
I mean, what is funny with the overhead kick is the touch that sends the ball wide.
Yeah, I know, it's brilliant, isn't it?
It's the classic Rooney touch. But
yeah.
I was near the commentary box, and Keane was going absolutely wild when the third goal went in. And then United ended going, we want 7, and Poznaning. And it was before half time, and suddenly
they almost got 4 just before half time, didn't they? This is where I like Valencia. Actually, he charges at his man and then just leathers across as hard as he can. Probably too hard, if anything. And Welbeck stretches and pokes it wide from 3 yards.
If anything, he's hit it too well, Clive.
Yeah, but that's when Valencia was his best. I love that. That just basically no messing around. Just charge at the bloke, shift it, belt it. And it's sort of it looks a bad miss at first 3 yards out, but actually there's just so much pace on it. And he stretches.
He's actually my dark horse for Valencia for who would come out of a Royal Rumble of all the United.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Like he's seen some stuff growing up.
Yeah, you could put a chair over his head, and he wouldn't. His heart wouldn't skip a beat.
I feel like you've thought about this.
No, I haven't, but just, it's just all there. But yeah, 3-0 half time, and then City, Mancini almost declared.
They blew the ref off. They're booing as the ref goes off. And I understand, I understand jeering, like giving people aggravation. I mean, it's one of the greatest things about football and life. But grown adults going boo. I can't, never mind my favourite fucking boo, but I can't get my head around that. And at half time, Keane says United should be going for 6 or 7, and he says that City should take their medicine, as United should have done at Old Trafford, basically, and just settled for a crushing defeat, but not an epochal defeat.
And that's what happens, really. He takes Mancini takes Johnson and Silva off, brings on Zabaleta and Savic, goes for a back 3. So it's kind of 3-4-1-1 and just leaves Aguero to do it on his own, basically, which sadly he was good enough to do. But just a quick note from the second goal, which is after half an hour to half time, United absolutely battered them. At that point, you think this is going to be a humiliation, which alas, it didn't turn out to be.
No, and Scholes gets stripped. Scholes comes on 57 minutes. He gets stripped on 57 minutes. And now I'd never really thought about this, but if Scholes just hadn't retired, would United have won the league?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
He played in that Blackburn game for starters.
Well, yeah, that's true. But you can sort of pick it. No, that's true. In the sense that they finished so close, probably, yes. But, yeah, I mean, that Blackburn game was an absolute killer because there's so many people missing from midfield for one reason or another.
And he comes on for Nani, and then they go to 3 in midfield. And
You've forgotten Kollarov's goal.
I just ignored it.
Yeah, 48 minutes. Richards goes forward. Evra fouls and gets booked. Really good free kick. Lindegaard had no chance. There's one bit before we get to score. Straight after that, there's Evra collects the ball for a throw in, and the camera briefly homes in on the City fans, and there are 2 fingers and wanker signs all over the place, which is the kind of thing you don't see that often anymore. I thought about this when have I last seen, certainly in person, but probably on TV either, a wanker sign. It feels like it's dying out, and
You need to come in the car with me.
that makes me sad.
Yeah, it is. Also, these days when you see people swearing, they tend to go with one finger, and that to me is just way too much American television. Not that watching American television isn't a good way of passing the time, but 2 fingers. And also, I always found that like the 2 fingers when you crook them towards you adds an extra dimension of fury, anger, menace, threat. And I say that, no one is ever going to feel menace or threat from me. But I'm a bent 2 fingers if I remember for that reason.
The everything reminded me of a picture we've spoken about loads, one of my all-time favourites from the derby, I think in October 95, when Quinn misses a sitter, and you could just see the entire, I forget which end it is, but anyway, just so many brilliant people you can pick out. There's one who looks like a chuckle brother, kind of leaning forward with the 2 fingers.
Leaning forward with the 2 fingers.
Yeah,
I know exactly.
So many. It's a beautiful image.
It's also one of those that you can put on Twitter and people will tell you that's me. And
Yeah.
Scholes comes on for Nani, so United got a 3 in midfield with Scholes, Rooney and Carrick, and then they've got a front 3 of Giggs, Welbeck and Valencia. And it's funny, I was thinking watching it, the midfield thing never quite happened for Rooney.
No.
And I wondered why, and then I was wondering if it was because the thing that made him special was the kind of the energy that allowed him to refocus the game to be just about him. Yeah. And he went into midfield when that had gone, when the energy had gone, I think. Yeah. I don't know.
I think he had the technical ability to be a Scholes type player, but he didn't have the personality. I agree with you. I think he had to be involved more, even down to the fact you think when the FA Cup final under Van Gaal, when by then Rooney had gone, but even then, there's still his footprints all over that comeback.
The drive, the last great Rooney drive for the equaliser.
Yeah, that's just the kind of person he was. I think he needed to.
And that was literally one of the most important moments in English football history, because if Rooney doesn't do that, then Alan Pardew doing that dance becomes probably part of folklore and mythology. And we're on the other. And it's not. I mean, it is that we're on the other side of that. We don't want that.
Yeah. But
it's also no one that likes football wants that to be the thing that gets shown, like in the opening credits to Match of the Day.
That's a worryingly good point, which
with like Keith Houcher, and John Sillett, like all your great FA Cup moments, and that.
Yeah.
I once heard Alan Pardew on the phone. I came out of Covent Garden Tube. And I thought, there's Alan Pardew. And he's on the phone, and all I heard was he walks past me and he goes, "There's only one thing for it, you got to fucking lie." I didn't hear the bit what came before it, and I didn't hear what came after it, but I heard that. And I thought, yes. If I was drawing a cartoon of Alan Pardew or something.
That's perfect.
A slice of Alan Pardew life.
Even the fact it's preceded by there's only one thing for it.
Yeah.
Makes it so perfect.
There's literally no other option other than to lie.
Yeah.
Correct, Alan. But I mean, in the same way, I'll always love him for one of the greatest non-United goals of my lifetime.
Yes, of course.
For Palace against Liverpool in the 1990 Cup semi-final.
God bless him.
One of our United's Jewish crew actually told me, the late great Andy Cohen told me that he was on his way to that game. And he was on the motorway. He was driving to Main Road, and they were listening to the Liverpool Palace game on the radio. And there was a white van in front. And the game finishes, and the doors of the white van open, and just an absolute torrent of United lads get out of the van and start dancing in the street.
Oh, that's glorious.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
That was, what a day that was, Jesus.
One of the greatest days of televised sport in history.
I have a theory that killed the FA Cup. Because it kind of basically showed, because I researched something for it a while ago, and I was struck by the extent of the hostility towards having both games on and not all the broadsheets, this disgrace, blah, 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 propaganda. And because it was such a triumph, like a complete triumph, it couldn't have been any more perfect. It just validated televised football immediately and in a way that would then grow and grow and lead to the Premier League, which in turn led to the FA Cup going down the shitter.
Yeah, and the FA and semis not being at Wembley.
Yeah, I really think that, I mean, you could probably piece it together a bit more elegantly, but I really do think there's something in that, which is quite sad, really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's all. That's always one of the things because football's good and it's too good for its own good,
Yeah.
which is why it's now the PR wing of repressive war regimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you want to talk to millions of people, basically you've got football and you've got religion.
What gets me is, why didn't this happen sooner?
It's one of those things. Like, it's strange that people didn't realise sooner. It's like sometimes you watch a sport and you see something and you think, why did no? So I think about that in cricket. Why did no one think that when someone knocks the ball to the boundary, if two of you run after it, they're playing cricket for 200 years before anyone realises that would be good, or that it would just be good to be good at fielding full stop, or it would be good if your wicketkeeper could bat,
or running between the wickets quick. Yeah, no, it's true. I suppose it's just the nature of life.
Things, it takes people time to discover things. I don't know, but I think you might have a point with that game in the FA Cup, and they ended up killing the golden goose.
Yeah.
Shooting the albatross.
Yeah. Back to this game. So not long after Scholes comes on, United should have a second penalty. Valencia does his Kanchelskis tribute, a Kolarov, who basically panics completely and just sort of bundles into him. Clear penalty, but Chris Foy, the referee, clearly thought, I can't give any more. It's not worth it.
They've had enough. It's like when my daughter will come up to me and she'll be like, "You promised me this," and it's like, "I did, but then I subsequently gave you this, that. It is basically that, where there is an agreement that you do owe someone something, but the course of dealing between you agreeing to deploy the rules of football or hand over a sweet has sort of become you've waived it in your mind by all the other things that you've been forced to do in the meantime."
The frustrating thing about that is, so if that's given, it's 4-1, Rooney hat-trick, presumably, and the humiliation is on again. But instead, 2 minutes later, it goes 3-2, and a different kind of humiliation is on.
That's it, isn't it? Like, I mean, let's do the goal first. But Scholes gives it away to Milner down the right, slack touch back from a throw. And then Lindegaard, I can't decide if I think he should have done better with Aguero's shot rather than just shoveling it back into his path.
Do you not think it's one of those that a playground footballer just hoofs it out for a throw-in? He's torn between going with his feet and his hands, and he ends up sort of falling over it and shoveling it back out.
Maybe if he had to dive on Astro or on concrete,
I would have thought twice. That's one of the few I'd have just stood there and nonchalantly hoofed it out for a throw-in. You know what I mean? Yeah. You see that? Do you remember when... and
then giving him two curled fingers.
Yeah. Do you remember when United beat Arsenal 4-1 in Michael Knighton game, and the kind of game-breaking goal from Hughes in that game? It's a really good turn and hit, but it actually goes straight where Lukic's feet are, but Lukic is in the process trying to dive to save it. You get quite a few goals, and probably less so now, actually. It feels like keepers are more... Maybe
De Gea
exactly
revolutionised that by going with his feet. But I'm now thinking...
and then he stopped going with his hands completely.
But now I'm now thinking that in goal, have you read Goalkeepers Are Different?
No. I've got
Goalkeepers Are Different is a novel by Brian Glanville for kids that I read probably tens of times when I was growing up, once I'd finished all the Michael Hardcastle books.
I used to love those.
Yeah, similar ilk. The ones about running, all of that. Mark Fox books, they were my favourite of the Michael Hardcastle ones. But so in Goalkeepers Are Different, it's about the goalkeeper. I think his name's Ron, and he's a keeper, and he talks about practicing continental saves with his feet. Oh. So Brian Glanville was writing about this.
That's like 50s, isn't it?
Is it that? I don't.
Maybe it's not that far. I don't know.
I thought it was maybe the 70s. I'm now looking on my shelf. It is there somewhere, but I can see Barcelona, Bayern, and back.
Oh God, dear.
But I can't quite see it. But yeah, I think it was. Yeah, so I guess it was a thing. But De Gea has taken that to another level, because I think, and we kind of like to talk in superlatives and absolutes, but I've never seen a goalkeeper with better reflexes than him.
No, I haven't. Which makes what's happening now even harder to fathom, because it feels like even his reflexes have gone up to a point.
Although he's been quite good recently.
Yeah, he has. There were a couple of really good saves against Villa. But no, you're right. And I hope whatever happens in the next year, 2 years, doesn't overshadow how astoundingly good he was for about 4 years.
I mean, what happened with him was Calvin, the guy who emailed us in before, he is a tennis coach, and like an elite level tennis coach. And he always said about De Gea that what you get with him is what happens when you've got a sportsman who's not under threat for their place, which he wasn't, but they also know they're in no chance of winning any of the big pots, and he went stale. because
Yeah.
there was nothing to challenge him. And you have some sportsmen for whom that doesn't happen. Like, it didn't happen for Steven Gerrard, say, because he had that drive. But other sportsmen, they need a little bit more than that. And I guess the way that De Gea celebrated the winner against Wolves, kind of hoping that the team
That's
being
true,
good
yes.
again. And Pogba's another good
Pogba,
example.
yeah, I was going to say Pogba. And even Martial, up to a point, more in terms of stimulating to find levels he didn't know he had.
That when the team is good,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's just your place being under threat, it's that
No, it's
there's
kind
a
of
reason
wider
to play,
purpose. Yeah.
there's a reason to play well. Like we saw it with Pogba for France as well.
Yes.
The kind of mean, intense cruelty that you need to deliver twice every week is not something that those lads have in their makeup. So they need circumstances to make it like that for them. Like Bruno Fernandes is a killer.
Yes,
he doesn't.
Rashford
He
is up
doesn't
to
need
a
it to
point.
be like that.
Rashford,
yeah, he's not a killer in front of goal, but he is a killer.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
In terms like when England get that penalty against Colombia, or when United get that penalty in Paris, he's pushing his way to the front of the queue. He's not, and if I have to, or maybe someone else would like a go. Like, and I mean, yeah, it's killer. So maybe killer instinct is a better way of describing it than killer.
Yes, agreed. His finishing still leaves it a wee bit to be desired.
And also, the runs he makes. But in terms of just like taking moments, why Rashford's big game record is brilliant now and been brilliant from the very beginning.
Yes.
Whereas the different kinds of personality need something a bit different to get them to that point.
No, I agree with that. Pogba's been quite encouraging lately, actually. I thought he was excellent against Villa. He should have scored twice, but apart from that, I thought he was
and one of them he missed because he was trying to be too casual in the way that he stuck it away. He was trying to make it look nice instead of just finishing.
Yeah.
But what you want to touch on what you said before about the goal is that the main thing that was bothering me was the shame of what happens if we draw this game. Just we've been beaten 6-1 by City. That was humiliating, and to then toss 3-0 against 10 men.
Yeah,
it's just absolutely a terrifying thought.
No, it's completely unthinkable. And they actually did. They panicked for about 10 minutes, didn't they, after the Aguero goal, and then they calm it down for about 10 more minutes, and then there's this wildly emotional finish.
They didn't have a lot of chances.
No,
City.
they
like,
didn't.
Watching the game, I really enjoyed watching the game, but it was a lot less fraught than I imagined.
Yeah, a lot less fraught than it was at the time. Yeah. There's one big penalty appeal about 82 minutes when Kolarov's cross hits Jones. It definitely hits him on the arm as he's falling, but it hits his leg first. So
he's falling.
Yeah, certainly now, God knows what it is. But in 2012, I think that's a fair decision. It's not a penalty. Had it gone straight onto his arms, he was falling, it would have been iffy because it was away from his body. But the fact it deflects off his leg, I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's falling in Jones.
But there was a bit of a panicky ending. There was one, because Lindegaard got a bit nervous, particularly after the second goal. There was one scramble from a free kick, like pinballing around the area. And then there was a kind of perfect or potential moment. 92nd minute, Ferdinand fells Richards, doesn't he, just outside the area. Kolarov's already scored one, and you think, oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, actually, we should say that by this stage, of course, to make it even more interesting, Owen Hargreaves had come on as sub for them.
I'd totally forgotten that Owen Hargreaves played for City. Yeah. And it just looks so wrong.
Yeah. I hadn't, because I remember you talk about the potential embarrassment of 3-0. When he comes on, that's ratcheted up further. What if he's got something to do with it? Well, just one thing, though. Aguero had obviously had a really good first half of the season. But this was the first time I watched him and thought, shit, he might actually be serious. Because the second half, he's pretty much doing it on his own. Nasri's ineffective, and it's pretty much him.
I remember later on being at Wigan where we lost, and we were singing David Silva, done fuck all since Christmas time. Yeah, and then, look how that ended up.
City were really clever, actually, in the second half, because they played basically rope-a-dope. It just let United have the ball for ages, and then, like Ferguson, wait for us to make a mistake and break. And they did, and it was pretty much one-man counter-attacks almost.
In commentary, they criticised them for going to three at the back.
No, I thought it was really smart, actually.
Saying, right, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to play more defensively. It's just sometimes three at the back can be a way of getting more men further forward because you've got more security at the back.
Yeah, exactly. It gave them the scope to spring out when they needed to.
But they didn't really create much. There was one really dicey moment on 86 minutes when Rooney heads the back pass back.
Oh God, yeah.
Which is always just a complete bollocks in mouth situation.
To be fair, he does it quite well.
Yeah. It's just.
But you're right. Yeah.
While the course, he knows that he can do it because he knows he's Wayne Rooney and he knows it's under control. But when you're watching it happen, I think I mean, you sort of transposing your own self into that situation to think, oh my God, I'll make a ball.
I'm planting that into the corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was
in Howie style.
That the Kolarov free kick in injury time was straight at Lindegaard, but he sort of punched it out into a dangerous area and got away with it. Then big Pantilimon comes up for a corner and gets to actually and flicks it across goal and wide. And I think that was the last touch of the game.
Yeah, and so Warren Heyman sent me a message and he said, one of the weirdest games I've been to. Started off extremely concerned following the 6-1 defeat, which was fresh in everyone's mind. Rushed into the 3-goal lead, lots of United baiting with we want 7 and lots of Poznanning when the third went in. Ended up clinging on to the 3-2 win at the end. The whole game was exhausting and I felt like I'd played at the end. At the final whistle, it felt like a defeat of sorts, considering how City had played with 10 men. They had the moral victory, which counted for nothing, and United went through, but probably without a great deal of confidence that you normally get from a 3-2 derby win away from home. Weird game.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really well.
I really liked what Fergie said afterwards. In classic style, he said, we made them better than they were.
I know, yeah, brilliant. And I quite enjoyed typical Keane, because everyone's saying, oh, well, City played in the second half, which they did, to be fair, in the studio. And Keane says, we can give credit to Man City, but the bottom line is they're out of the cup.
It's the funny thing about... I love that. The bottom
line. He's all about the bottom line, is Roy.
It's funny because it's weird when you have, because it's very rare that you get a game of that intensity at lunchtime.
Yeah, it's true, actually.
And then you come out and it's like, there's like a whole day here. And it doesn't feel like that. It feels like the only thing you can do after a game like that is finish off the day and not go to bed, but just not get on with the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But you come out and it's like 2:00 in the afternoon or whatever, and there's a whole day ahead of you. But how can there be a whole day ahead of me when I've just lived through about 4 years?
On the plus side, you had the BDO darts to watch.
It was very lively outside, and a lot of, I would say, in our car, winding down the windows and appraising City fans of the situation in case they'd missed it. And it was because you've got a cup allocation as well, and it's just the streets are just absolutely teeming with Reds and giving it out. It was fucking great. That's what it was.
I enjoyed it a lot more watching back because it's the kind of game I haven't really thought about, but it's incredibly intense for a game that ultimately, I mean, it wasn't about the FA Cup, was it? We obviously talked about that losing its luster anyway. It was just about. I
would like to come back to that in a second, but yeah, what you said, the rivalry it's one of those strange things because something that we should not have, right, is Abramovich's money in football and Abu Dhabi's money in football. Football is better off without those things. By a long way, and it is a little but it is something that is in my mind. Like without Abramovich's money and without Abu Dhabi's money, it's entirely feasible that United win every title from 2017 to 2013.
From 2007, you mean? Yeah,
2007 to 2030, United win every title.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And even as a United supporter, that's not good.
No, that's true. And actually, you're right. I always think about that in reference to the Arsenal rivalry. Without each other, they probably would have won 8 or 9 titles in a row. But the things they won wouldn't have been anywhere near as sweet as they were.
And the ones that, if someone asked me, if I asked myself, more likely, really, which are my favourite titles, it's really easy.
Yeah.
Like 93, 99, 03 and 07.
Yeah. I'd chuck 96, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, 96 as well. Yeah, 96 is also a good one.
I don't know what you mean. Most of them are...
well, they're all...
regaining.
2013 was a great one as well, because they all come the year after you've lost it.
Yeah, exactly. What was Giggs' quote about when you failed to win the league?
The long summers, those.
Yeah.
He's asked about what keeps him going, and he says fear of failure.
Yeah.
Not the joy of the moment.
There was a nice quote. There was
quite sobering, I think, that
yeah,
it's not like you don't actually enjoy the things that you should enjoy all that much. You just hate the things that you hate.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, and Fergie obviously cultivated that incredibly well.
Which is different because I remember once when England the cricket team went to number 1 in the world. I think it was then, but it doesn't really matter when it was. And Andrew Strauss says, "We'll celebrate well."
It was then,
and I thought, I am never going to know even a scintilla of the joy that those lads are going to experience now. And I found that quite a sobering moment because it's like, I bet they fucking will celebrate well.
The closest I had was a few pints of Bromley Weatherspoons after winning our five-a-side Tuesday night five-a-side competition. But yeah, it wasn't exactly the same.
Just the idea, and it's really, I find it quite hard to understand the joy that these blokes have to deal with.
Yeah, just again and again. And it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see this over the next couple of years with Liverpool and also with Gerwyn Price and the darts, how much they can just keep reproducing it. Because it is such, and this is why actually, you look back at Fergie, but also someone like Phil Taylor, you think it's just astounding how they can just do it again and again and again and just be relentlessly greedy.
Especially with darts, because playing football, you often hear players who quit and they say the thing that they miss is the lads.
Yeah.
Whereas darts or tennis is another one, just not like that.
No.
That being a tennis player doesn't look like that much fun. As in, the actual practice aspect of being a tennis player just doesn't look any fun whatsoever. So to keep coming back requires quite a lot of mental strength. Because I also think that aside from fighters, tennis players are probably the fittest of the athletes as well. Because you just get no respite.
Yeah.
And what it takes, as you say, to keep coming back. And I mean, we say this a lot, but it is part of the genius of Fergie.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. Which sadly didn't lead to anything at the end of this season.
Yeah, so where did we go from there?
Well,
it's funny, really, when you think about it.
They lost in the next round at Liverpool.
Going to all that trouble to BC, go and get beat at Anfield in pretty lame fashion, really.
It's similar to the 01-02 Ruud van Nistelrooy's game at Villa, that astonishing comeback, and then they go and just turn it in at Borough in the next round. A really dismal game. And then obviously the league.
Fergie turned that one in, which is... I was actually thinking about that just before when you were talking about the cup and whether the cup was important. Ferg stayed pretty faithful to the cup, I thought.
Well, yes, he did, I suppose. But I think of a couple of times when he could have. I mean,
Borough is the one that stands out as the one where he didn't.
Everton 09 as well, albeit out of necessity because they were competing for everything.
And
what else?
It was funny though because the Villa game has properly gone down in the annals of Red history, whereas this City game is really an afterthought.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I wonder if that's because we can't bear to look back at the rest of the season. The annoying thing is it actually went perfect. Like after this game, it couldn't have gone much better. United won 11 next 12. City started dropping points here, there, and everywhere, and it just looked like they'd done a Devon lock. And then, of course, United did an even bigger Devon lock starting at Wigan.
Devon Locker.
Yeah, and also, annoyingly, which culminates in that kind of just such a meek 1-0 defeat at City in the decisive league game. Contrast with this, where they really had a go, and it was such a...
I thought that was part of it, really, was that it was... I think Fergie knew that in an open game, United were going to get beat.
Yeah, possibly.
Good players knew as well.
Possibly. He still picked such a defensive team, though.
I couldn't get a ticket for that game. And there was this sports channel around at the time called Sports Tonight Live, and it was just terrible internet channel, but they used to pay me to go and talk about football. And so because I couldn't get a ticket for the game, so I went on Sports Tonight Live and I watched the game live with Nicky Summerby.
Oh, God.
And when they scored, he put his fingers in my face.
Did he?
Yeah.
It's gone up.
And I know that I was talking before about being one of those people that
it's gone up in my estimation.
Doesn't experience anger, but that took all my skill in not experiencing anger. To Antonio Valencia him with a chair.
Yeah.
But I was proper fingers in my face. So what would you say was the big thing you took away from watching the game again?
Probably what I said before, really, that it's so... Because the future and sometimes the past can really influence our memory of games. And actually, when you watch it again, I really lost myself in that precise moment when it just mattered so much. And it was an incredibly kind of emotional game. And I
think the weather really helped.
Yeah, I think it did. And obviously the context, 6-1 and everything else. But yeah, it was actually quite refreshing. And it made me wonder, are there any other games like that I've kind of just don't really think about much because of what happened subsequently. But also it's interesting what you mentioned now about Villa, that has a similarly unhappy ending, for want of a better phrase, but we still think about that a lot. Maybe it's because losing to Borough is, annoying, but what the hell, whereas the end of this season was so...
I think it's the pitch invasions and the fact that the goals were scored by Solskjaer and Van Nistelrooy, and it was just a massive red invasion.
And also it was 2-0 to 3-2 rather than 3-0 to 3-2.
Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking about was and Schmeichel in net.
Yeah. The other thing about it is actually, you're right, what you were saying about Abramovich and Abu Dhabi's money, there's a kind of probably 4-year period up to the end of Fergie, where one team's on the way up and one team's on the way down. And it made for such interesting games. I mean, obviously there were a few, like the 6-1 that were a bit absurd, but there were some absolute crackers. The 3 games in 2009-10, which I absolutely love. The fact that all last-minute winners, it just felt like a kind of emphatic kind of confirmation of the natural order, keep putting them down with last-minute winners. But ultimately, you couldn't do that forever. Actually, just one other thing, just Rooney scoring twice against him in the FA Cup. You wonder what would have happened had he not been banned for the previous season semi-final for that what nonsense.
I missed that one because I was on a stag in Hamburg, and funny thing happened to me there was we're in Hamburg, and you're meant to be able to buy things quite freely in Hamburg. So we're in this bar, and I drunkenly said to this woman, "Do you know I can get any pills?" And the woman said to me, "I'm a policewoman." And then she said to me, "But if you just ask my friend over here, he'll sort you out." So that kind of I always associate that kind of that serendipitous God got involved to make me not as pissed off as I was previously that happening. But the other thing I was going to say was we're talking about the Abu Dhabi money. It made a big difference to the rivalry with City.
Yeah.
Once City started contesting, obviously no one likes City being good and no one likes City winning trophies, never mind taking trophies away from United. But the edge that it's given the derbies is great. There is something. It's made the derbies into something that they weren't before.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. That primal emotion. Isn't your Twitter pick? Isn't that you at the 1-0 when Scholes scored in the last minute?
Yeah, it is. That is up there in my great United moments.
Yeah, but see, that's you're not going to get that from albeit there were great moments in the 90s, Kuchelski's hat-trick and Giggs' winner when Keith Curle kindly invited him to shoot exactly where he did shoot. But they weren't quite on the same level, were they?
No, I mean, the thing with that game in particular was, the whole season was basically at stake there. Chelsea were playing Spurs that day. And if United don't win that game, then it's over. And then the whole season is gone, and then it's there again. Plus, you've already had your two last-minute wins of this world already. There are a lot of wild faces in the wide of that photo.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening, and really hope you've enjoyed it. We really appreciate all the feedback, all the support. Even if we don't read out everything, we read everything, and we're grateful for all of it. So thanks very much for that. And if you did enjoy our dribble, please leave us a review, send it around your United chat groups, and give us a rating in your podcast app. And if you're new to the show, have a look at our previous episodes.
Yeah, and if you've got a suggestion for a game you think we should cover in a future episode, or just a great story you think we should include, you can email us at unitedrewind@gmail.com or send us a tweet at unitedrewind. Next week, we're looking back at the 1977 FA Cup final when the Docks United beat treble-chasing Liverpool 2-1 at Wembley.
There's no question about that. Well done, Rob.
See you up there. Come on, up there. Come on there. Leave with you. Come on there.